Imagine hearing one person's journey from pain to purpose bring light through the cracks of your own pain and spark something new within you. On this episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast, I sit down with published poet and author Armen Kaymakcian. At just 12 years old, Armen experienced sexual abuse by someone he and his family trusted. As he entered his late teens and early 20s, he found himself in a destructive lifestyle, surrounded by harmful influences and feeling completely lost. One day, overwhelmed, out of hope, and hospitalized, he cried out, "God, help me or take me." In that moment, something shifted. A series of unexpected events began to align, and they helped guide him toward a new path. Today, Armen is a husband, a father of three, and the author of He Calls Me Redeemed, a memoir that became a meaningful outlet for his own healing, and now helps others see that even in life's darkest moments, light can still break through. Today's the Day is more than a podcast. It's a global movement. I'm Jody Grunwald, certified professional coach, transformational architect, and founder of national and global platforms that prove one truth. Connection is the most powerful driver of results. I work with leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals looking for deeper connection to themselves, to their teams, and to their mission, so they can move forward with purpose, exceed their goals, and positively impact their bottom line. I don't just coach, I help architect transformational change that sticks, whether it's for a company, nonprofit, or for individuals. Learn more at todayisthedayliveit.com. Please subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. So let's dive in, because today is the day to witness what's possible when truth is honored, healing begins, and courage becomes contagious. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am your host, Jody Grunwald, and as I say every single episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today, I'm so excited to have Armen Kaymakcian here with me today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Jody. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have been looking forward to this interview all week because we met by chance at an event. I heard a little bit about your story, and I know there's so much more to tell. And I was just so inspired by all that you've been through and how you've come out the other side. And I said my listeners need to hear this story. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us today.
Absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure, Jody. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to read a little bit about your bio, and then we'll get into our conversation, okay? So Armen is a newly published poet and author. His highly anticipated breakout memoir, He Calls Me Redeemed, which is right behind me over here if you're watching via the YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. His book was released on November 3rd, 2023. His poetry To the Bone was published in the June 2023 Armenian, I said that right? Armenian,
Yes.
all right. Armenian General Benevolent Union issue. Armen is an Armenian American author and poet. He was born in New Jersey in the 1980s. I wish I was born in the 80s, Armen. He grew up living between his Italian family on his mother's side in Long Branch and his Armenian family in the historic town of Asbury Park. His life journey inspired him to begin writing, and as a promise to himself, his first literary work is a product of his redemption in life. Armen writes from the perspective of on the Armenian American, yet his story is very much American. His vast life experiences allow him to explore themes such as culture, crime, death, and spirituality with authenticity. He Calls Me Redeemed is his first memoir. So beautiful, and super congratulations on the book, the poetry, and just finding your way through. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thanks so much, Jody. Appreciate that. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, we're both from New Jersey, because this podcast is streamed now, maybe more by the time we air this, in 895 cities around the globe. So it's nice that they'll be hearing that we're both from the same state here and area. And so, when I met you and I heard a little bit about your story, I said, wow, I believe that this is such an issue across the world, the globe, and what you've been through. So why don't we get started and start, as I do with every single guest, from your childhood. And this actually goes right into your book. So why don't we talk a little bit about who Armen was as he was growing up?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a lot of great memories from when I was a kid. My as it said in my bio, my mom's side, Italian from Calabria. In West End. They're from in Long Branch, New Jersey. And then my dad's side was Armenian, and so they owned an Armenian hotel and restaurant in Asbury Park, about 2 blocks from the beach, and it was called the Armenian Royal Hotel. And it was like full dining room with belly dancers and the whole thing. It was a really, really cool place to grow up. My dad was a musician, so he played music there nightly, and it was always in the summertime jam packed. And I just remember being a kid and having the greatest time there. I mean, it was really phenomenal. Just normal kid. Spent a lot of time with it. You talked about growing up in the '80s. I was just having a conversation with somebody about how different things are now, and we used to hop on our bikes and ride miles away and nobody knew where we were, and we just get lost in the adventure of everything. And it's not like that anymore. Things have changed quite a bit. It was a really, really fun childhood. At a certain point, about 10 years old, I endured quite a bit of childhood sexual abuse. And it was very abrupt, came out of nowhere, and completely just, derailed my entire life and set me on a really dark path.
I know that you had mentioned to me about chapter, yeah, and let's go back for a second. It's not chapters in your book. There are rooms. We'll get to why there are rooms in one moment, and it'll make sense to everybody who's listening as you just shared a little bit. But chapter 2 and chapter 3, when you do put them side by side, and I have read them both, it is a very interesting journey for you. Do you want to share a little bit about those two rooms, and share also why you call them rooms instead of chapters?
Sure, yeah. So, well, the idea to structure the book into rooms rather than chapters came at the very end of my writing process, and I had this thought or memory of being a kid and in my family's hotel in the wintertime when it was vacant and nobody was there. I'd be bored, so I would kind of just roam around. I would be alone and I would roam around kind of through all these rooms. There was about 40 rooms in this hotel, and I would just look at all the different. There was, in the lobby there was painting of Mount Ararat where Noah's Ark was said to land, and all kinds of things that pointed to our culture. But throughout the rooms, just taking notice of the ashtrays and the bedding and the little soaps that we had, and all these different things. And I thought, like, how cool would it be to kind of walk the reader through my memory via these rooms, and give them an intimate tour of the memories of my life. So that was the concept for structuring the book into rooms, excuse me, rather than chapters. Um, and remind me, Jody, what was rooms chapter 2 and 3,
Two and
or
three.
rooms 3, 2, and 3? Yeah. So room 2, the title is Armenian Royal, and I wanted to get a little bit into my family's hotel and kind of what the feel of it was, what the vibe was there in summers on the Jersey Shore, this time of my life. And so I go on to describe some of there was these old Armenian ladies that were in abundance there, and they were like having extra grandmothers. So, I had a lot of fun with them. They had a lot of fun with me. And there was always people coming in and out. It was just a very interesting place, like I said. Um, the other part of that that's significant is that I describe there was a young girl. She was the daughter of a friend of my father's that was staying there one summer, and she was the first experience I had really, kind of making out with a girl, and I was very young. I was like 9 years old, and she was 11, and so I describe what that was like in detail, and when I describe it, there's a lot of description about how light she felt, and what her hair smelled like, and all the different intricacies of that moment. And then, moving on to and there's some more significance with with that room as well. My father, and kind of some hints to things that will come later on in the book. But room 3 is where I get into the childhood abuse, and I described the first encounter because it's interesting with a book. When you're writing a memoir like this, you have thousands and thousands of memories, so you can't include everything. You'd love to if you could, but you can't. So you have to. Um, you have to kind of use the words and moments sparingly, and you got to pick something that will give the reader the ability to get what it is that you're trying to say in one scene or one experience. So I decided, and rather than going off into this whole um, chain of events with the abuse, I would just describe the first encounter, and everybody can use their imagination what happened in the year after that where the abuse continued. But when I describe that incident, I also am very descriptive in how heavy the man felt, and the negative aspects of how he smelled, and the cigarette smoke, and all the different things that I was experiencing. So there's a parallel there between the first encounter I had with this young girl, which was very organic and very natural for me, and was a great experience, and was really just an incredible time for me as a young boy, versus this horrific experience in the next room. And they parallel each other. So if you put them side by side, you'll see that parallel.
So yes, absolutely, I did. And I noticed exactly what you were just saying about the heaviness and the lightness. And I can't even imagine, though, during the process, right? Having to relive it through your mind, through writing the book. What did that feel like for you as you were writing that out? I mean, obviously, I see the difference between how you talk about the girl and how you talk about him, but just that experience to have to relive it in writing.
It was a strange experience because it was therapeutic in more ways than one. I mean, I had already, I'm a Christian, and gave my heart and my life to Jesus Christ almost 15 years ago. And when that happened, a pastor once told me, he said, uh, you know how it is with Jesus? I said, how it is. He was a funny guy. I said, how is it, Pastor? He said, well, he said, have you ever, had a date with a girl and she's going to come to your apartment, but it's kind of a rush, and it's a disaster and it's a mess everywhere. So you run around and you grab everything and you throw it in the closet and you slam it shut, and she comes over and you just walk her around the apartment and show her everything, knowing that you're not going to show her that closet. He said, well, Jesus comes in, he walks right past the cleanness of that apartment, and he goes right to the closet and he opens it up and he says, yo, you got some stuff in here that needs to come out. We got to deal with this stuff. And I think that's true. And when I became a Christian, some of these things that had, been untold and undealt with and laid dormant for so long within my heart and soul, all of a sudden had to be dealt with. And I think I did a lot of work in that area with the Lord, and really, um, it sometimes, to me and to some other people as well, it's a wonder that I am where I am. And rightfully so, because when you look back at my life, there was a lot of things that were really, really horrific in nature. So yeah, Jody, you got to remind me the question again. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
And no, you're doing great. I was just asking, like, to write down
Oh,
the words, to go through all of that. You said you started to say that it was almost therapeutic, and
yes.
for others out who are outside may feel like it has to be almost torturous. You feel like, how difficult is it? But I'm glad to hear it sounded like it was more therapeutic.
Well, there were parts of the book that I wrote, specifically the last room, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that one in particular, really, I mean, I think I cried, and I'm not, I'm, it's tough for me to cry. In other words, I don't do it very often. When it happens, it's something significant. And the last room, really, really, I mean, I cried through the entire while I was writing. And there were other parts as well. I don't believe that I cried through this one, but it was very, there was a very deep sense of, how can I explain? So when you think about things, you think of them basically surface level. right? Until you have to write them down in description, at that point you start to really have to see them on the page and take everything in and be in that moment, be present. And I think a good artist or writer, what have you, I think creates whatever they're creating for themselves first, and then everybody else will get the benefit of that. I think if you try to do it any other way, I think it won't have the same effect. And I think that writing this story for me first, and what affected me and what really um uh affected me emotionally, affected the reader as well, because I did it in a real authentic way, again, writing it for myself. So to answer the question, it was heavy. It was heavy to write those things. It was heavy to relive them in that kind of detail. It was also a challenge, because I wanted the book to be able to I wanted young teenagers to be able to read the book and glean wisdom from it and be affected by it. I also wanted it to be able to be on church bookstore shelves and what have you. So I had to write it in a way where I delve into the abuse, but I don't do it in a way that um, is distasteful or I wanted to make it as accessible and authentic as possible. And I think I did, hopefully, a good job with that.
You did, you really did, and I'll be honest, I didn't finish everything in the book, but I have to say you definitely took and take us on a journey, your journey, and it's written very, very well. I give you so much credit. I know you're a new author, as I'm soon to be as well, and it's hard to put out a memoir, but in general, a book, and it's written in the first person up until the last chapter. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, so the entire book I had written from my perspective, and it was obviously just I mean, I think that would be the most common way that you would write a memoir, but came very natural to live out this experience for the reader. Um, the When I got towards the final portions of the book, when I was getting to the last room, I kind of didn't know where to go. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I was going to tie up some loose ends. I was going to bring it to a full circle type of a moment for the reader and for myself, really, too, of course. And I had this thought one morning. I was up early and I'm thinking about things. My father had passed away a few years prior, and if you notice on the back cover, it's me and my dad there, and we were super close. I mean, we were not only father son but best friends, worked together, just this incredible relationship we had, and also a difficult one too, because he had a lot of his own challenges, which are outlined in the book. But he had passed away, and it was fairly. I think I might have said a few years, but I'm thinking about that now. At the time I wrote the book, it was not very long after that I started writing, after my father passed, and I thought, the one person that you want to talk to when you lose someone you love is that person, and you can't tell them what you're going through, you can't tell them what you're feeling, and it's just devastating, and it's a pain that is just heart wrenching, and you want to be able to talk to them. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna write like a letter to my dad, as if I was sitting here with him right now, and I could tell him everything I experienced that day that he passed away. So you'll see in that room, or in that chapter. Um, you'll see what it was like when they came to take his body, and the conversations I had afterward, and the next hours that took place after that, and then the phone calls, and family members, and making arrangements, and all these different things, and kind of a introspection on my life, his life, our relationship together, what came before me as far as culture, history, ancestry, and then moving forward into what was coming, almost a nostalgia for the past and the future, if you will. Thinking about legacy, and my I have three sons, so thinking about my three boys and what kind of men they will be, and there's a lot encompassed in that last room.
and incredible. And I know what it's like to, my dad passed several years ago. We're coming to 10 years now, and it goes very quickly, but he was my best friend, my mentor, and everything, my life coach. And so I understand exactly how difficult it is. And that is the person you want to speak to when you're going through the hard stuff, right? That person
Absolutely.
is, they leave such a mark on your life and legacy there. And you're, by what you've put in this book, his legacy, and he lives on in people's minds that never knew him. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Jody, well, first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss of your dad. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There's a part of me that, I wonder what he would, I don't think I would have written the book while he was alive, just because, I don't know what he would have thought. I think there's a lot of people would love to, I heard Robert Greene the other day in an interview, and he said, he said most people will never write that book or start that podcast or create that business or whatever it is that they're wanting to do because they're scared to fail, because the fear of failure is worse than never doing it at all. And just you can kind of say, well, I don't know, if I would have tried, maybe it would have worked, but I didn't. So that's better than failing. And it's just people are very fearful of that. I think another fear, uh especially when writing a memoir, is what are people going to think about this? I mean, family members and relationships you have with people, are they going to be affected? And I would hope that my father would be proud of some of the things that I've been able to accomplish, as far as writing, publishing the book, and then so the people that have been affected over the course of the last few years. Some really incredible stories. And I a good friend of mine. If we have time, I'll tell the story because it's a good story, and I think it's the reason that
Yes.
the main reason that I wrote the book above all else was I wanted my story to give hope to people that had no hope, and I wanted to lead as many people to Jesus as I could without preaching to them, without overwhelming them with my belief or my faith. I wanted to just tell them my story, my life story, and then let them come to their own conclusion. That was my concept. And so I was very careful about writing the first half of the book as if I'm not even a Christian. I wanted to write it from the perspective almost of how my life was before I got saved, before I became a Christian. And then after that, you'll there's it's weaved in and out of the book, just like my culture and things are weaved in and out of the book. But I believe it's not so overwhelming that and this is coming from other readers and editors and things like that. But
Hmm.
one of the main reasons, like I said, was I wanted this to affect people and make them really stop after reading the book and say, huh, I'm gonna have to think about that. And so I had a good friend of mine that I've known for years and years and years. I won't mention his name just in case he doesn't want me to, but he called me out of the blue, and when I was still in the writing process, and he said, "Hey, man, did you write a book?" And I said, "Yeah, bro, I did. I guess he must have got it from somebody else we know or whatever." And he's like, "Are you serious?" Because I didn't tell anybody I wrote it until after I was finished. So it came as a shock to some people. And he said, "Well, can I read it?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting a list of people together. I'm gonna, send an early copy to read. I'll put you on that list." He said, "Oh, awesome." So I get a text from the next day. He's like, "Bro, I can't wait. Just send me the PDF. I want to read it right now." So I knew him well enough where I said, "Okay, I'm gonna send him the PDF." I sent it to him, and he asked me if we could meet at a coffee shop or something. So we met one early morning, and we're sitting there talking, and he's like, I thought I had a relationship with God, but after reading the book, like I really started to ask, like, what is this all about? And where am I at with this whole thing and my family and whatever. So we're sitting there talking to each other, and it was just like it was really unbelievable that he goes to the same church as I do now. His whole family comes, and we're very close. I had dinner over with he and his family not that long ago, and it's just amazing because he's one of my oldest friends. And it's very rare that you would have a relationship. I mean, it's over 30 years. We're talking. We were 14-year-old kids together. So that was really quite remarkable. And one of the things that was really interesting that was pretty incredible how organic things like this actually happened. But at that time, I was going to be doing an interview where they were asking me to write kind of a synopsis of the book. I said, "Man, it's so hard to write a synopsis of your own book." And he's a really intelligent guy. I mean, when I tell you he got like almost perfect on his SATs, he's a very, very, we were miles away from each other. He was book smart. I was more street smart, but Anyway, I said to him, I was like, man, could you write this synopsis for the, because he just had such good insight and picked up on so many things from the book. So he writes the synopsis. I get it back from him, and I'm like, I read it, and I'm like, dude, this is the perfect thing for the back cover of the book. This is a great book description. So the book description on the back cover is actually he wrote this.
That's
And so it was,
incredible.
and it was at the very end of the process. I had no idea what I was going to do for the back cover until the very end. So you know, the whole thing was really kind of interesting. Maybe the listeners will be interested in this, maybe they won't, but the back cover, a couple things happen. So he writes this beautiful description. I had this picture of me and my father that I had in mind, and I wanted to use a picture of my family rather than an author picture, because I just thought how cool to show people where I was and where I am. So I did that, and then the picture itself, when I did the book trailer, which you can see on my website, I'm sure there's links in the description, but there's a book trailer there that I filmed with a great friend of mine, Steve Munoz, and he's a videographer, very talented. And this was a still shot that he took of me standing on the same jetty that I spent so many hours on with my father as a kid, kind of looking across the expanse there into the abyss, you know. And so it's just really incredible how natural all those things came together. It wasn't, you know, premeditated. It kind of all came together at the very end. So
What an incredible story. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And look at how if you didn't send that if you didn't send that book to him as a PDF prior, yeah, it wouldn't have happened the way it did. So
mm.
it's all signs, that is for sure. Today is the Day is more than a podcast. It's a global movement. I'm Jody Grinwald, certified professional coach, transformational architect, and founder of national and global platforms that prove one truth. Connection is the most powerful driver of results. I work with leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals looking for deeper connection to themselves, to their teams, and to their mission, so they can move forward with purpose, exceed their goals, and positively impact their bottom line. I don't just coach, I help architect transformational change that sticks, whether it's for a company, nonprofit, or for individuals. Learn more at todayisthedayliveit.com. Please subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. There's a lot of your story we haven't shared yet, right? There's a lot more in the book than what we've shared, and I'd like to kind of, have you talk about. So this abuse happens, but your life takes a turn, and it doesn't get better at some point. It doesn't. It's now that's where I'm so excited where you are now, but there's other things that happened, and I would love it if you could kind of share with the listeners where your journey took you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, if you would have met me as a 12-year-old kid, you would have met a kid that was really struggling to make sense of the abuse that he was, you know, going through or had just gone through, trying to kind of keep it as deep down as I could, so that, you know, I could I could just live and maneuver, you know, around everything that was going on in my life. You're going through so many changes and things at that stage of your life. And if you would have met me at a 14-year-old kid, you would have met a kid that was, you know, just angry, chip on my shoulder, had this wall up, you know, kind of, you know, just doing all the wrong things, you know, smoking pot, drinking, and hanging out, and getting into trouble with the wrong, you know, all the wrong people. Again, my father's side was from Asbury, so it was, you know, a low income neighborhood, and a lot of drugs, a lot of crime, and I got into a lot of that very early. And you know, I found identity in that. I found a false sense of identity, and I found a false sense of strength. You know, it was really a veneer or a facade that I had kind of used to keep people at a distance, and to basically just try to survive the elements that I was in. And you know, if you get a little bit further, you know, into my adolescence, at you know, my teenage years, 18 years old, I'm now a kid that's full on. I want to be a gangster. I want to be a you know, I'm watching all these movies, right? You know, all the faves, Goodfellas and Scarface, and all of these movies that you know, and the music that kind of fueled, you know, everything that we were doing at that age, and kind of wannabes, you know, wanting to get into that life. And later on in my 20s, I'm now full on selling narcotics. And, I'm out of my house at 18. I'm living in Neptune, and I am, just trying to make my way. An older drug dealer who was, pretty significant in the area at that time took me under his wing, and I'm with him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm kind of working for him almost on a full-time basis, and getting to know the ropes, and learning how to maneuver in the street, and very low level stuff, but trips back and forth from New York to New Jersey, and um, a lot of hustling, a lot of crime, and those types of things, which led me into a lot of chaos, problems with the law, problems with people in the street, and everything else. So, you know. As that's all going on, I'm not dealing with any of the things that happened in childhood, and it's progressively getting worse and worse. And I'm using, from the time I was young, we were, taking acid, and, experimenting with different types of drug, ecstasy, and things like that. And in my 20s, I started to, partake in some of the drugs that I was selling. So cocaine, and not heroin until a little bit later in my mid 20s. And, when I started to use heroin, it was just like game over. It was like this is the thing that is giving me every piece that I was ever looking for, all the peace that I had been longing for. Because I think when a person has a life that's filled with all types of chaos, they're just looking for peace in their life. They really, really just want um, you know, what we all feel on a regular basis. If you're living a good life, a blessed life, you're feeling hope and joy and peace on a regular basis, hopefully. But for somebody like me at that time, I didn't feel that at all. So the few moments I had of reprieve were those moments after I shot heroin. And I outline in the book my first experience shooting heroin, and how the progression happened. And um, yeah, I once I really um, dove deep down that path of heroin addiction, it took everything from me. I became a walking corpse. I was a shell of a person, and just robbery, committing crime, stealing things, to try to get money, to get high, and just a miserable, endless loop of misery, that it was just the most desperate, horrific feeling that you could ever feel. And I was suicidal a lot of the time. I just had gotten to a point where I'm like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. So there was one afternoon, I shot my last couple bags of heroin, and I am in Long Branch, New Jersey, and I just decided that's it. I'm gonna just end this whole thing. So I went to go jump in front of the Long Branch train at the train station. On my way to the train station, I felt this force just like compelling me into the hospital. And I had been through a lot of detoxes, rehabs, locked up a few times. And I went into this hospital. I told them what was going on, Monmouth Medical Center, and they put me in the psychiatric ward. I had been there before, and my mother had found out where I was. She asked me if I needed anything. I said, "Mom, there's a Bible on my nightstand." I had gone to a Christian rehab called Keswick Colony of Mercy about 6 months prior, give or take. And I was there for like a week, but I was shooting dope in the bathroom there, and I got asked to leave. So, it just shows you how insane my mind was. That I'm going to a rehab to try to get clean, but I brought heroin with me because you're petrified to not have the drug. So, I was clean for like a week there because I had run out, but they found out about it. They asked me about it, and I told them the truth, and they asked me to leave. So, figured I'm done with that place, and kind of moved on. And fast forward, I'm in this psychiatric ward. It's the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning. My mother had brought me that Bible, and I am just in there, and I am in the most desperate place that you could imagine. And I just all this chaos that went on in my life, just it was all like boiled up into this this one moment. And I opened up the Bible to a random page, and I said, God, I know that you're real, but you seem so distant from me that I don't know where to find you, or how to find you, or if you care about me, or what. But I'm just asking in this moment, I need you to speak something to me. I need to hear from you, like I've never needed to hear from you before. And I opened up to this page. It was Psalm 88, and that is a psalm that David wrote, and I'm reading the psalm, and it's just like this desperate plea to God, to save him, because he's just in the most desperate, hopeless, dark place, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I could have written God a letter in that moment and told him how I felt, I couldn't have done it better than David did in the psalm. And it just, something in me just broke in half, and I dropped to my knees, face to the floor, tears, just crying, uncontrollable crying, and I'm begging Jesus to save me in that moment, and I'm just like, I'm basically like, kill me or save me, but I can't do this anymore. And in that moment, I felt just like when you're a little kid and you're crying and you can't breathe. I felt like this embrace, from God, almost like a hug from your father, and I calmed down, fell asleep. I really didn't feel any different the next morning. Woke up just like any other morning, and they came in. They said, "Look, we have to ask you to leave because you don't have health insurance." So I'm like, I haven't had 3 days clean in like a long time. I said, if you guys could let me stay, if there's some way, something I can do. And they said, well, why don't you try to use our phone? You can't stay here, but try to get in somewhere. So I called this list of like 10 places, no available anything. There's no nothing. So I get kind of fed up, and I'm now a little bit angry, and I go to my room and I grab this. There was like a white mesh bag that had a few clothes in it, and that was all I had left in the world. I have nothing, no one. Like there's, my mother, because always, your mother, your father were like the last two people, and that's why I tried to do what I could to honor them in the book, because I didn't want to dishonor them in any way, even though we had some difficult things. But they did the best they could, with a lot of things. But all I have is this mesh bag of clothes. And I go to the door, and they got to buzz you out. It's a big metal hospital door. So she goes to hit the buzzer to let me out on the street. And in mid hand motion, the phone rings. So she picks up the phone. She says, it's for you. I get on the phone. It was the director of admittance for this Christian rehab in South Jersey that I had been to. And I recognized the voice. I recognized him. He said, Armand, how you doing? I told him what was going on. I said, terrible. I told him what was happening. He said, well, a strange thing happened to me last night. I said, what happened? He said, God woke me up out of a dead sleep and told me he wants you to come back to this place. So I'm like, trying to make sense of this whole thing right now, because this is a very bizarre few hours that I had between the middle of the night and now getting this phone call. So I'm wondering, did my mother call him? Nobody called this guy to tell him where I was. He searched for me all morning to find me, because at the same time that I was crying out to Jesus Christ, he was waking this guy up in another part of the state to come bring me back to a place that has a list a mile long of people waiting to get in. I figured there's no way. I didn't even bother calling that place, because I said there's no way they would ever have me, but I'm not even going to bother calling. And lo and behold, this whole thing happened. So I'm just like kind of blown away. I knew it was my opportunity. I left there. I spent 4 months at this Christian rehab, and really read the Bible for the first time, got to know the scriptures. Just it was a very incredible experience, because it was in the beginning when I first got there. It was just this. I was so sick, because withdrawal from heroin is like, it's very few other things that you feel that kind of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain. It's just it is beyond the worst thing that you can go through, from my experience anyway. And so I went through a lot of that. It was a work program, so I was trying to go through working and doing all the things that I had to do while going through the sickness. And it was just, it felt like completely impossible. And but God was faithful, and I just kept taking one step in front of the other, and kept moving through doors that He was opening for me. And I spent that 4 months there, and just really excelled, and felt like a completely new person. Just felt like the old person had died, and there was a completely reborn new person, ready to live life and ready to just thrive in every way that I could. And so the rest is history. I got home, and I had some hiccups, and I outline a lot of that in the book. I'm talking a whole lot, so I'll wrap it up and let you continue. But yeah, 15 years later, fast forward, here I am. I'm a father, husband. I have 3 boys. Great job. I do a fair amount of writing on the side, and have some projects that I'm hoping to get done in the future. So that's where I am.
What just incredible. And I have so many different places I'd love to go with this. It's just an incredible journey. And I truly believe if you listen for the signs, they come. They absolutely come as long as you pay attention. They're there. And you have to believe in them, whether you believe it, if they, whether it's God, the universe, spirituality, anybody who listens to the podcast, whatever it is that you connect with, if you pay attention, those things will happen for you. There's somebody out there right now, Armin, and they're listening, and maybe they either A, have a family member who's going through this, or B, they're going through this themselves. What advice do you have for them?
So, my sons and I just got done watching. There's an incredible series on TV right now. I don't mind plugging it because it was just so good, and I really really enjoyed watching it with my boys. Everybody's familiar with the story of David and Goliath. It's just one of the things I love about the Bible as a writer is we take everything in as human beings in stories. Mostly. So the Bible's really incredible for that because as you're going through it, there's all these narratives and all these stories that are so easy to take in, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, you can take these in. And so we're watching this series on the story of David and Goliath, and they just did it at such a high level of storytelling. Just it is beyond. I don't have enough good things to say about it. But we're watching it last night, and the finale was on, and where David is going to actually fight this Goliath, and it is just the most impossible thing. You know what I mean? Like when he's looking at it, it's like here's this little guy. He's a shepherd. He's not a warrior. He's got no experience in fighting, but God had used all this time to prepare him for this moment because when he was in the field, it seemed like a very mundane, kind of purposeless job to do, to be a shepherd while everybody was doing all these significant things. And God was using him. He was protecting the sheep. So he was killing bears and lions with this sling that he had. And that really prepared him to be able to go up against Goliath. But what was more than that is that his strength didn't just come from within himself, it came from something outside of him, which was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they that he mentions in the story. And so he goes up against this giant, and it is just the most impossible moment. And when you see the triumph, you're like, oh my gosh, like it's possible. With God, all things are possible. And so I would just say that my situation was so hopeless, and so there are very few people who knew me back then who would have ever imagined in their wildest dreams that they would see me where I am today, that I'd be living the life that I'm living, that I'd be here on this podcast and among other podcasts and conversations and projects and whatever, where I'm living this life of hope and purpose and meaning. And there's so much good that's happened, and there's so many blessings that I've had. I've traveled, so many different parts of the world, and just experienced just extraordinary blessings in my life. And there was a time that I thought that was completely impossible, and there's a time that I know that many other people thought that that was impossible. And in fact, the title of the book, He Calls Me Redeemed, the reason that I titled it that is because the whole concept is that back then people called me all kinds of things. They called me useless, they called me hopeless, they called me a drug addict, they called me a junkie, they called me, whatever they called me, all kinds of things. And I called myself a lot of things, but God had another plan, and he calls me redeemed. And if he calls me redeemed, then there's nothing anybody else can say about it. It's done, it's final, it's finished. And so I would just say to those out there suffering that feel that they have no hope, there is hope. Take the next step, get through the next day. There's enough troubles each day for itself. So don't worry about tomorrow. Worry about today. Just get through today. Get through the next minute, if you have to, the next half hour, and don't give up. Don't lose hope. I, of course, as a Christian, have to say that I would tell anybody out there who feels lost, get alone with God and ask him, pray and have a moment, a real moment of authenticity, the way that I did with God, and say, okay, God, you're God, and I'm just me. I'm just a man. I'm just trying to do the best I can with the cards that I was dealt. How do I make sense of this whole thing? And what do I do here? And, everything changed for me in that one moment that I gave my heart and my life to Jesus Christ. So I would be completely remiss. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that, like you said, Jody, that have all kinds of different beliefs and whatever. But as a Christian and somebody who gives all the glory, I should be dead right now, let alone forget about being an author. I shouldn't be alive. And I outline what my funeral should have looked like in one of these chapters, which is pretty interesting. And my mother had actually asked me to pick out a suit and a coffin because that's how sure she was that I was on my way out. And so I shouldn't be alive, let alone an author. So I give all the glory to God. And like I said, I'd be remiss without directing people directly to Jesus Christ for their hope.
So, going back to, you talk about your family and kind of like your mother kind of gave up, it sounds like, right? Because she obviously tried and there were lots of tries, right? And to hear that, even that, you're a mom to say to her son, pick out your suit. I mean, that yeah, I'm a mom, so I think about that, and that's unbelievable. There are, and I know a lot of people, and I actually, my ex was an alcoholic, so I understand who I left. So I understand how hard it is to support someone sometimes when there just seems like there's no hope and there's
Mm.
not, it just, there's nothing you can do. What do you tell a caregiver, a parent, a spouse, someone who is, watching this all happen and doesn't know what to do and how to help the person? Do you have any advice for them?
I think there's two extremes that you should not go to as a parent. I can only imagine my kids are young, 8, 6, and 1 years old, and so I can't imagine what it's like to have that type of a situation. I know people, obviously, many parents come to me at speaking engagements and different things with an open phone, and I already know it's going to be a picture of their deceased son or daughter that died from fentanyl poisoning because we have a an epidemic in our country. It's been 100,000 people plus per year for quite a few years now. And if it were anything else, everybody would be, just going ballistic, figuring out a way to come against it. But it's not talked about enough, and it's taken so many lives. But I would say there's two extremes. One is just, complete. I'm not going to do anything to help you, and just, toss them out, and that's it, and forget it. And the other extreme is to do too much for them, you know, to keep giving them money that they ask for, to keep bringing them back in and doing all these different things for them and taking care of their car payments and taking care of their financial. That's a lot of times what it is helping them too much financially to where they are enabled to go out and continue to use the drug. So I think as a parent, you want to, the temptation is I want to help my kid. I want to do what I can to. I've always loved them. I've always provided for them, and so this is what I need to do. And parents continue to fuel that fire by giving them easy money and by making arrangements and giving them the car and all these different things. And it can be really difficult because when you're an addict who's experienced and you've lived a life like that for a long time, I became so skilled in manipulating people and if you have a natural tendency toward that anyway. You can sell people on why to give you the money, why to give you the car, all these different things, whatever the thing is. And so it could be really difficult to navigate. What does my child actually need? And how, what ways are they trying to manipulate me? I think after a while you'll notice a pattern and be able to kind of discern how much you should do and how much you shouldn't do. But I would say for parents, don't give up on them because there's always hope. But be careful how much you're enabling them and what you're providing them with, and that it's not actually hurting them rather than helping them.
I know it's different for every person who is dealing with this battle. And so, and there's no, I know there's not one size fits all for everyone. So I know that's hard. I did have a question too, did you ever tell anybody after the abuse? Did you share with a family member or anyone that it happened, or you never told anybody when you were younger?
To my recollection, I don't think that I told anybody. Um, not that I can remember, and I'm trying to, really. I've thought about this before. It's not the first time I've had the thought, but I've really tried to think hard about it to to think, was there somebody? But I don't think that there was anybody that I told. And as a matter of fact, I was dating a girl when I was about 16, and she had gone through some abuse herself, and she told me about it, and I even stayed silent then. And there's a chapter in the book where I talk about, um, all of this, basically the theme of hiding things, you know, and how much I was hiding at that time, and how I almost enjoyed hiding. I enjoyed sneaking, around and doing these things that people wouldn't catch on to, all these different things. So I give this list of things that I was kind of sneaking in and out of these places, and doing all these sneaky things. But that was one of the things that I snuck right past people, was this, um, this really major, life altering, horrific event that took place in my childhood that I kept from everyone, and was able to kind of sneak past people until I was in my late 20s, where I finally told someone. And that's, look, I've had people reach out to me, because when you write, my life is literally an open book now. So, when I'm talking to people, they're like, how did you put that out there, man? Like, I've had people reach out to me, especially men, because it's really difficult. I think a lot of men, it's more uncommon for us to talk about that, because of, I guess, a lot of different reasons, but you don't see it all the time. And definitely don't see men writing too many books in regard to it. So, um, I've had them reach out to me and say, I've never told anybody, and this has been, just killing me inside for years and years and years. And that's been really, really just an awesome blessing to hear them say, I read the book and I decided to finally tell my parents, and tell my wife, or tell this person. And the weight that came off of them when they were able to do that, not hiding that anymore. But yeah, it's a really difficult thing. And the challenge is, once the book was finished, I almost had a momentary, like, I can't believe I'm putting this out into the world. Like, this is something that is extremely personal, and now, like, the entire world is. But then I thought that the benefits would outweigh the negatives in regards to how this is going to help people, and it became, the thought of keeping it to myself and not sharing it with the world became actually a selfish concept, to not put that out there, for my own fear and my own insecurities and whatever else. It was like, no, I have to put this out there. There's actually a moment when I had finished the book and it was completely done and ready to be published, but before it was published, and we were going somewhere. I think maybe it was a trip to Florida or something, where I thought, like, oh my gosh, what happens if, like, something happens to me? This is not going to get out into the world. I texted my brother, and I said, "Bro, I gotta call. I gotta talk to you." And I talked to him, and I said, I sent him all the files. I said, if anything happens to me, this book gets published, because that's how important I felt that that it goes out and helps people." And so, yeah, it's a difficult thing to put out there, for sure, to tell
Right,
people.
because there's so much judgment. We as humans, and I say this on a lot of my episodes, we are human, and for some reason we have this innate ability to judge each other,
Oh yeah.
which is terrible, because we'd all do so much better if we stopped judging each other and ourselves so much, right? And allowed ourselves to just be who we are and not
Mm.
judge other people for who they are. And those who judged along the way and called you the names that you said, look at you now. It's a real testament to the human spirit when you have this believability and you give yourself to, as you did with God, and be able to connect and have that ability to feel supported. And when that you have that innate support, amazing and incredible things can happen. And you had mentioned, people who are afraid to write the book, do the podcast, do all of those things. We all have the ability. It's just this imposter syndrome, and I talk about that a lot on the podcast.
Mm.
That we all suffer from it at one time or another. So most forward facing people do. I could talk to you for hours, and I hope that we could do a part two to this episode. As I know we're pretty much at an hour now, and I would love to be able to do a part two, because I have so many other questions to ask you. Are you up for that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. Anything before we end this episode that you want to share?
Sure. You said a few minutes ago about judging people, and there's this great quote by Hemingway that says, everybody's broken. That's how the light gets in. you know? And so
Amen.
I think that from the perspective of, one thing that's really great about the experience I've had in this life is that I've been so broken and so marred and so um uh I've done so many horrible things myself, and committed so much crime against other people and done things that most people will never do. And so the great advantage of that is I don't see people from the vantage point of uh, I'm up here and everybody else is somehow down here. There is none of that, because we're all on this level playing field and we're all broken, and the Bible says that we all fall short of the glory of God. And so we're all in this broken place. And so I think the one thing that will put together all of the thousands of fragments of pieces that we all are is you know, to be authentic. And like I said, in that very real moment that I had with God, I gave my heart and my life to him, and I admitted that I'm a sinner and I'm broken and I have things that are wrong with me. But God, you're perfect and you don't have any brokenness and there's nothing wrong with you. And the moment that I understood who God was and who I was in relation to him, and I laid it all bare before him, and I had that very real moment, everything changed for me. From that moment forward, my life was never the same again. And so, if I would leave people with anything, I would just leave them with, don't lose hope, don't lose heart, continue on. Um, like you said a minute ago, Jody, there's a book maybe to be written about your life. There's a podcast that needs to happen. There's conversations that need to take place. There is hurting hearts that need to be helped by your situation. I think the difficulties and the pain that we go through as human beings in that brokenness gives us the ability to then go out and help and heal others that are going through very similar circumstances. We wouldn't be able to do that without first going through that pain. So um, there's purpose in the pain. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose heart, and just keep going.
Well, I am so grateful to know you and to meet you because you inspire me when I hear you speak. And I never heard about that quote that everybody is broken. That's how the light gets in. I mean, that's just beautiful. And that, thank you for sharing that. Where do people get your book?
So you can get the book anywhere books are sold. The title is, I'll just hold it up so you could see it.
Yeah.
Maybe people could screenshot because I have a long last name, but this is the title. You could just type it in Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books, it'll be available. And it's available in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And here's the name here. If you just go to www, type in my full name.com, the website will be there, or I'm sure Jody, you'll put some links
Oh,
below
yeah.
in the description so people can get the books there. And you could follow me on social, Instagram. I'm pretty active on, and a lot of the projects and things I've coming up. I have a poem that's going to be published pretty soon, and some other things in the works. So anything that I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram, or check out my website, and you'll see some of the things that I have going on, speaking engagements and events and different things taking place from time to time. So yeah, that's I'd love to connect with you there, and yeah, that's where people can find me, and you can get the book anywhere books are sold.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I absolutely want to do a part two to this because there's so much more I feel like we can share and it's going to help other people out there. And that's what I always hope each episode does. If it connects even with one person, we've done our job. And that's how I felt for almost 5 years now with the podcast. Thank you, Armen, for
Thank you so
sharing
much.
today.
Thank you for having me, Jody. It was such a pleasure, and such a pleasure to get to know you and talk with you. And you're really looking forward to future conversation with you.
Me too. And thank you for helping me because I'm getting ready to put together the compilation book for Changemakers, and you have been a really big help. So, and very quickly since we've met. So I want to say that publicly. Thank you for your help with that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Anything I could do to help you, just let me know.
Thank you. I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast episode. Today is the day you cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So, what small or large steps are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Have a great week, everyone. And thanks, Armen, for sharing your incredible story with us.
Thanks, Jody. God bless you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye bye.